I wanted to give an update on the Rubicon and the repairs we need to do to get it back on the trail. A few weeks ago on Fins and Things, as we were riding down the trail, the tie rod end on this side broke and I lost all steering control. We pulled it over on the sandstone. I did a quick little trail repair to get it back to the truck. And while I was down there making the repair on the trail, I noticed the radiator was leaking, which is kind of good timing since summer is coming. I want to make sure the cooling system works well, so I also replaced the radiator. Since I was removing the radiator, I took off the front rack and plastics so I could have easy access to everything in the front end, and it also opens things up so I can see better where the tie rod ends are and how to get those off and demonstrate how those are fixed. A radiator replacement is simple to do. The first step is to drain. There's a little petcock at the bottom of the radiator. Just unscrew that and drain all the fluid out. Then it's held on with 10mm bolts. There are 4 on the oil cooler and 3 that hold the fan to the radiator. And then there's an upper radiator hose, a lower radiator hose, and this overflow. So just undo the clamp on the overflow, unscrew the clamp on the upper radiator hose, unscrew the clamp on the lower radiator hose. There will be some fluid drain out, so make sure you have a catch pan underneath to catch all the radiator fluid that drops out. And then remove the radiator, put the new one in, bolt up the intercooler, bolt up the fan, reconnect the hoses, check for leaks, and you're done. One thing to note is since the radiator is aluminum, these bolts can strip the threads, so be careful when you're tightening these in. You want to start them by hand and then just snug them up. Now on to the tie rod repair. You can do this repair without removing the plastics, but removing it really opens things up so you can see what you're doing. So this is what the tie rod end looks like. This is the part that failed. There is a rubber boot around the ball joint, and what I think happened on this one is that this rubber boot got destroyed and then allowed sand and water and debris to get down in there, and as it moved around, it worked that joint out, and that's what caused the failure. To remove the tie rod end from the ATV, you'll need an 11/16 inch wrench and a 3/4 inch socket. The 11/16 inch wrench secures the tie rod end as you release or tighten the castle nut. This is the tie rod end that broke. You can see the failure was in the ball joint. The rubber boot came off, allowed dirt and debris to get in there, wore out the ball joint. So it pops out just like that. And that's what happened at Fins and Things. So I need to remove the castle nut that's on top of the steering shaft. And I've already loosened this, so it should come out pretty easily. It's a tight squeeze in there. So there's the end of it. You can see there's the ball joint. And the other half I've already loosened on this. So the tie rod end should just slide out of the machine. Reinstalling the tie rod is quite easy. There is an adjustment notch on one end of the tie rod. That goes to the outer, which ties to the wheel, and the inner does not have the adjustment notch. When placing the tie rod ends onto the tie rod itself, only thread it on a couple of turns so you have plenty of adjustment to adjust the toe in and out of your front tire. Reinstallation is quite easy. Just slip the tie rod up in, and there is a bolt hole up in the steering shaft. And then you take one of your castle nuts here and put on the top. And this is really tight in here, so sometimes you can get to it from the back of the engine. From back here I can see where the tie rod end comes up through the steering rod end. So I've got the castle nut on top and I'm threading it down. And then get the other side put in on the tire. Which I probably already goofed because it may be hard to get this back around. Let's do this real quick. I should have aligned it better, so I just had to unscrew the end, and then I'll turn it on here a couple times. What I'm doing now is putting the tie rod end through the hole in the hub on the four-wheeler. So if it's not aligned, you can move this tire back and forth until it drops through like that. Then grab your castle nut and come underneath and thread it on. A quick trick on how to adjust your tie rod ends. When the tie rod is installed, there are 2 jam nuts that go against the tie rod end. So once you've got your final adjustments, you want to tighten the jam nut against the tie rod end. To do so, you're going to need a 19mm or a 3/4 or a 22mm or 7/8 inch wrench. The larger wrench goes on the tie rod end itself, the 3/4 inch wrench to hold the jam nut. You do want to use 2 wrenches on this. You don't just want to put 1 wrench and start cranking, because when you do so, you put a lot of stress on the ball joint. That's what failed down in fins and things. So you don't want to be cranking on this and damage the ball joint, or your new tie rod end will be broken. The other trick on this is the inner tie rod end is a reverse thread. So you can see there's a bolt in there that goes, there's a jam nut that goes into the tie rod end. This is a reverse thread, so to tighten it, you have to go counterclockwise. You can see how I'm going counterclockwise and it's tightening the nut onto the bolt, which is backwards. So it's really hard when you have to make an adjustment. If you forget that this is a reverse thread, you might be cranking on it to loosen it by turning it lefty-loosey, but really you're tightening it. On a 4-wheel drive ATV, you want to have your tires, your front tires towed out a little bit, meaning the fronts of the tires will be spaced a little wider than the rear. On a 2-wheel drive ATV, they recommend a little bit of toe in. Reason being, a 2-wheel drive pushes from the rear tires, which kind of forces the front tires to move out, where a 4-wheel drive ATV will kind of pull on the front tires, which will pull it in. So that's the rule of thumb. You don't have to be exact, just kind of get it in the ballpark. If you look at the ATV from the front, you'll see that even though the steering wheel is straight, this tire is turned way out. So I'm going to use a 10mm wrench on the adjustment notch on this tie rod end to bring this tire into alignment. So all you need to do is turn this the other way to tighten it, to shorten the distance. As you turn this tie rod, you can see the tire start to adjust in. It's going to take a lot of adjustment. We're almost done with the tie rod installation and tire alignment. I've already tightened the castle nuts, inserted the cotter pins, and done a visual alignment. The last step of this process is to roll the 4-wheeler back and forth and allow the tires to settle in their natural position to make sure that the alignment is correct, because sometimes when you're aligning on the floor, it could bind up a little bit. So we're just going to roll it back and forth a little bit just to see if the tires are still aligned. And see if they're, so like I said earlier, you want to have a little bit of a toe out. Looks pretty good, except this one over here looks to be a little farther out. I'm going to just adjust it back just a hair. And then we'll repeat the process. So you just keep repeating the process of rolling it back and forth until you're satisfied where the tires end up. Also make sure that your steering bar, make sure that the steering wheel is straight. Looks to be centered on the, looks straight. That looks like I went a little too far. Wrong way. Okay, we'll roll it back and forth again. And we just keep repeating this process until, now that one looks in. So this could take a while to get right, but what's wrong with it? Those look pretty straight. Now that we're satisfied with the alignment of our tires, I'm going to go ahead and tighten the jam nut. So you can tighten it by hand until it makes contact with the tie rod end on both ends. I'm going to use the 7/8 inch wrench to hold the tie rod in and the 3/4 inch wrench to hold the jam nut to tighten against it. We're going to tighten this on the outside, just so it's jammed like that. And then on the inside, it is a reverse thread, and it's a little harder to get in there. So once again, I'm using the larger wrench on the outside. And we're going lefty-tighty on this because it is reverse threads. Yeah, that jam nut is tight. So We'll just tighten the other side and then we'll take it on a ride and make sure that everything feels nice and tight. Now it's all tight. I'll take it on a quick ride, make sure it handles right, and then I'll put all the plastics back on and we're done.